los perros.
Repentinamente, en 1980, se observaron extraños círculos impresos sobre los campos de trigo en el sur de Inglaterra, lo cual llamó poderosamente la atención de algunos investigadores. Desde entonces, estos círculos se han multiplicado y su diseño se ha vuelto cada vez más complejo. Algunos han pretendido ser los autores de estos círculos, pero no lo han podido demostrar, mientras que investigadores como Colin Andrews sí han podido probar que existe una verdadera evidencia innegable, como por ejemplo el análisis de los cristales de las plantas que se encuentran dentro de los círculos, o el extraño magnetismo alrededor de las figuras, e incluso un extraño sonido que se presenta cuando aparecen estas figuras sobre los campos de trigo. Evidencias innegables. Por ello, Programas de Investigación ha querido incluir dentro de su colección OVNI este trabajo de Colin Andrews. Evidencia innegable. Una investigación que debe de ser analizada profundamente. Una evidencia innegable.
I think the patterns that we're now seeing, evolving, appearing in our fields, have purpose and they have meaning. The patterns are having an effect on people. I feel sure of this. Many people say to me, I've seen this before Sunday. I just cannot recall where, but I've seen this before. It means something to me. And they're right. I think it's locked up. These patterns have an unlocking, maybe the switching on of a particular part of the brain. We'll never know, but I do feel that they are having an effect upon world matters, upon our very lives. And yes, I do believe that the markings themselves are of the most profound importance because they are changing our way of life. They are changing our very being. Well, I saw my first crop circles back in 1983. There were 5 of them, the quintuplet set. Very pretty pattern in itself. But when I approached them and I had a close look at the sheer symmetry, the patterning on the floor that created that particular marking, the engineer in me recognized immediately that there was something else at work here. I have not been, it's not capable of being passed by. I had a very, almost threshold pain level, a feeling in my stomach when I saw that, and it was the beginning, the very beginning for me. It's been a quest ever since. I recognized something, saw something of sheer beauty, something which arrived there. There was no question whatsoever. It wasn't a flincing glance of a UFO or whatever. It was there on the ground in front of me, physical. It had happened. How did it get there? And the engineer recognized something which was very different to anything I'd ever seen, and it is just incapable of being passed by. From that day until this, I continue to feel compelled to know much more about what's going on, and I am also as sure now as I was then that it is something of the greatest of importance. The crop circle is an area of compressed and spiraled vegetation, usually cereal crops. We know not the reason for that, but primarily cereal crops, and the circular motion, the patterning on the ground is precise, it's symmetrically precise, it's extraordinarily pretty. The cut-off points around the perimeter, the circumference of these circles, are very well defined. It is as if a cookie cutter has been used from above and cut a circle into butter. It's that precise. It isn't a random event. It isn't as if the edges may possibly, conceivably be associated with a whirlwind of a kind, a natural meteorological phenomenon. It isn't like that. And as the many hundreds now and many thousands of people are seeing these markings all around the world, but particularly here in southern England, most of them would agree. This is purposeful because it is so symbolic. It must have meaning. Crop formations have been discovered in many parts of the world, from Australia, USSR, Canada, USA, Italy, Germany, Afghanistan, Turkey, Norway, and Japan. 80% of the global total have occurred in the United Kingdom. 75% of these arrive in a small area of central southern England, forming a perfect equilateral triangle between the towns of Wantage, Winchester, and Warminster. Over the years, we have been mapping the locations of the crop markings to build up a picture of the densities of distribution. And it is astonishing to see the relationship between the crop formations and the wealth of archaeological sites within this same area, including Avebury, Stonehenge, and Silbury Hill. In the beginning, there was a simple, single circle. These continued to appear in small numbers throughout the landscape of southern England until 1978, when we saw the arrival of 5 circles forming a cross. This marked the beginning of a continuous evolutionary development. Circles were recorded with single rings, double rings, and even triple rings. Triple circles forming equilateral triangles, and some even in a straight line. From a simple cross form arrived a tremendous, complex, beautiful Celtic cross. I had a phone call from Jeff Smith right here, telling me that close to a double-ringed circle, which we knew about and had fully investigated, he was harvesting and had discovered this amazing formation. And there is no, I would put my life on that formation as being totally genuine in every sense. It arrived from a source I don't yet understand. But I had laid in bed the night prior to this and had wished for a marking of this kind to arrive at a location close to my home, which would enable detailed investigation without the travelling across southern England, which we were having to do, but of course at great cost and a loss of time with the limited resource. And to my utter amazement, in the morning I received this phone call from Jeff Smith telling me of the pattern which I had visualized in this very field here. I will never forget the emotion which came over me when I looked down out of that aircraft and saw that cross. I could see the complexity of its construction, and nobody could doubt the authenticity of that arrival. I wanted a Celtic cross. I longed for that formation because I could see structurally it was an evolutionary step, a progressive step from the simple cross which we had already seen. And in addition to that, it has such powerful meaning. The Celts themselves clearly had reason. Something happened to the consciousness of man around the Celtic period, and all that we see around that period involved the carving, the drawings, the paintings, the praying to this same form, including the spiralling within those circles which structured the cross. Something of great importance happened then. They had great feeling and meaning, and indeed it was something that I felt was possible. And to have had that phone call the following day in a field as pretty well as close as it could arrive to my home, it may of course be, have been the most way out coincidence, but I just rather felt that perhaps it wasn't. What is it? It's a single circle with a pathway, is it? At Way Hill? Yeah, actually I'm not too far away from there right now. Yeah, so I'll go directly there and yep, that's fine, and you'll fly it, will you? Okay, Pat, yep, we'll see what we've got. Thanks, Sam, bye-bye. Tremendous importance, but nobody appeared to be listening. Just nobody was listening. But now, of course, in communicating this widely around the world, suddenly there is an awakening, and we have now offers of scientific assistance, and hundreds, thousands of people are now tremendously intrigued and involved in trying to unravel the mystery of these circles. Our database at Circles Phenomenon Research contains nearly 3,000 crop circle reports. During the last 10 years, I have visited, measured and catalogued over 1,000 of these, and each genuine formation never ceases to stir me. The fieldwork has involved soil and plant analysis, extensive ground, aerial and infrared photography, precise measurements, radiation and magnetic field readings, as well as computer support. It is only by detailed fieldwork that the authenticity of these crop markings have been verified.
Well, I know they're not A, hoaxes, and they're not B, the wind, because we had one night we were out walking the crops actually until 10 o'clock at night, and we were walking actually right through the area that one circle appeared in the next morning. And I was out there at 6:30 next morning when the circle appeared, and it happened right through where we'd been walking the night before. And we'd had a thunderstorm overnight and made the ground very sticky. So while we were walking through it in the morning, our boots were stuck up with mud. And when we got to the circle, it had been a heavy dew as well, and the crop was let down, covered in dew. There was no marks in it whatsoever. And where we'd been walking down the wheel marks, we'd left chalk prints on the leaves of all the plants. So the leaves had no signs of any chalk prints on them or anything. And the dew was all settled. There was not a sign of any disturbance whatsoever.
If I hone in quickly to some of the salient features that can assure the public of the authenticity of the phenomenon and the importance of this phenomenon, they are these. We have here in central southern England a strata of chalk and surface limey soil, which when wet will positively leave footprints. When dry, they will leave nodules of dried soil which will crumble to powder by the lightest touch. Now, in both conditions, human presence will be detected, and none are in the crop circles. We have plants which bruise easily, oilseed rape plants bruise extremely easily, and will snap off like celery when pushed over by human feet, ropes or chains or any other method which people may well feel inclined to try. And they will find that again those plants will not perform in the same way as these extraordinary circles are performing. Those plants in the crop circles that we're looking at do not bruise, they are not bruised, they are totally respected in every respect by the energies involved, and they do not snap, they are bent.
Last year we went into one of the circles shortly after it was made, and it was a bar connecting the two circles, and in the centre of the bar, where that joined the circle, there was 5 different layers of crop in the circle, where the circle been forming at the same time as the bar, and they were all layered, and none of the layers were the same direction, so they were all at slightly different angles and all layered like a weave pattern, all on top of one another, and there was at least 5 different layers we could see in there. And the complexity of the circle, I mean, it's so fine lined and detailed. I mean, last year we had lines which were only inches wide, and you couldn't make them even with your feet. And the crop is, when the crop is laid in the circles, it is not sharp, it seems to be just laid over flat, and if the crop is green when it goes down, it seems to recover itself and turn at the node and point back up again and still carry on growing. So it's not actually been broken, it's just laid over. So it's got a gentle action on the crop and not severe enough to break it. And I think it's amazing how it just corrects itself, and you end up then with a crop with the heads all pointing up but about 6 inches lower than the rest of the field at the end of it. So.
The new decade heralded the discovery of a formation which would polarize thinking and coin a new phrase, pictogram. This new family pattern was probably the most pronounced evolutionary step yet, which led within weeks to something much more dramatic. Additional fingers, boxes and rings. The sky was the limit, capped in the closing weeks of the season with a breathtaking pattern at Foley Down in Hampshire, which was to leave us the winter to contemplate what might occur the following year. 1991 saw a reduction in simple forms, but a consistency of complexity which included a strong suggestion of insect and animal shapes, dolphins, beetles, and other unusual shapes that we are still studying. There are other phenomena which we believe may be associated with this particular phenomenon, and I can tell you about a few of them. Several people have reported seeing tubes, beams of light emanating from a source in the sky and pushing down through the dark sky into the fields in which crop circles have either already occurred or are discovered the next morning. We have many reports of what we're now calling the golden star. It is indeed a light in the sky which is much brighter than a star. It's golden in colour, amber, and that light has been seen not only directly over the fields, in a couple of cases in the fields in which these crop circles are then discovered. So there would appear to be sufficient evidence to associate the airborne phenomena, the illuminated airborne phenomena, which is really quite exciting at night, with the ground effect. Those are certainly just two, but there are many, all kinds of phenomena which are extraordinarily mysterious in just about every conceivable way that may well be linked to this whole mystery. It's the bringing together of a whole series of pieces of the jigsaw puzzle are beginning to slot into place. And unless we do keep a very wide vision, a very diverse approach to the research, frankly, I think we could miss the very clues that mean so much. As I approach the edge of the circle, just look and see what happens to the rods. I've taken the inserts out of these two fountain pens to demonstrate you don't need physical contact with the rods to achieve the same reaction. I'm approaching the circle now, and on the edge of it now you see that reaction.
We use the rods if we've got broken water pipes underground which we can't find. We usually use the dowsing rods just to find out exactly where they are, and they're usually pretty accurate as to where the pipe runs. So as a matter of interest, we've just took them out into the circles to just see if they react to them at all, and sure enough they do. As we approach the circle, the dowsing rods open out as we get to the outside the circle, and then when we get into the middle they cross right above the core of the circle. What we have here are energies which have total respect for nature, and this is what I mean. These plants lying in sympathy with all of those around, flowing here like water running down a stream, totally undamaged, absolutely natural in every respect. Even here, a pigeon's feather lodged in position and in sympathy with the flow. Another example of these energies is right here. This plant has been compressed to the ground for over a week. What has happened to give it such vitality? Comparing it with its neighbour nearby, looking sick in every respect. Undeniable evidence. Something important is happening. The plants themselves have been analysed through a very advanced German process, through one laboratory, the only laboratory in this country at the moment capable of undertaking that particular analytical examination. And what has been discovered there, again, is undeniable evidence that the plants are going through a change in their crystalline structure.
We run a lab in Stroud, in Gloucestershire, where we evaluate samples from patients for various practitioners. And from the energy patterns seen in the samples, you can tell the condition of various organs in the body. We got very interested in the crop circles, and because you can do this process with plants and herbs as well, because anything living has its own energy structures and patterns. We decided that we would go and get a few samples from the crop circles and put them through the process. Well, we did this, and we really weren't expecting to see anything. It was just idle curiosity, really. We came back and we put these samples through. We found, to our amazement, that anything that came out of the pictogram or the circle had a different energy to that of the control sample.
And this can be confirmed by examining a slide of the energy pattern of the unaffected corn taken from a control sample outside the crop circle. All our control samples show this same uniform pattern. However, when we take a sample of corn from within the circle, you can see that there is a dramatic difference in the energy pattern of the crop, as if the crop has been affected by a very high level of energy, something that is impossible to fake. A third sample taken from within the same crop circle 6 weeks after its formation shows that the original energy pattern of the corn is starting to reappear as the energy which created the circle gradually subsides.
We have found over the years that some people need to be satisfied that we are looking at a real phenomenon. Now, human trait as it is, clearly there have been circles created by man, and those are very easily discernible. We have a vast network of people now reporting these markings to us, and we follow them up quickly, primarily and initially by aerial surveillance.
Hi Steve, hi Colin. Okay, so we start off Chesford Head, a couple of orbits around there, then we'll head up north, up to Avebury, and then head back down, and you want to maybe have a look at Stonehenge on the way back?
Yes, that's possible.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got a couple nearby just to say. Ever since I first became aware of the crop circle phenomenon, I have been working closely with local pilots who know this area very well indeed. And with their help, I have monitored and recorded the tremendous increase in crop formations from under 30 in 1983, 70 in 1987, reaching a staggering 500 in the summer of 1990. Not only the quantities have increased, the densities have now grown to as many as 30 in 10 acres of field, compared to 5 or so in a square mile just 4 years ago. The dimensions too have increased, ranging from 60 feet diameter circles in the early 80s to formations over 400 feet long in the last 2 years. The patterns from the air are awe-inspiring, tremendous graphic patterns of extreme and yet delicate beauty nestling in the landscape. Many would never have been spotted from the ground. Only in the air can the scale of the phenomenon be appreciated. The aircraft is invaluable for aerial surveillance and photography. Each circle has a fingerprint pattern which is recorded from the sky and entered into computer. We have seen a positive evolutionary period. Nobody now doubts that. Some did, particularly well-known scientists in this country doubted the fact that we were looking at an evolutionary tendency in the patterning some years ago. That has now proven itself. We are now beyond that. These patterns are evolving at a very rapid rate. They're becoming so complex, so symbolic, so obvious that they cannot any longer be ignored. We don't have to learn whether it's an A, a B, a C or a D, or whether it means black or white. The meaning is automatic. The consciousness of man is being affected directly by the input of the pattern into the mind itself. Appreciation of nature is of paramount importance. Focus the attention of the people on the patterns and where they are occurring. Most important. The patterns themselves have more meaning than we will ever understand and probably will ever know. But whilst we're studying it, whilst the people are looking and thinking and wondering, the effect is underway. People are meeting They are making friends. They're recognizing their place in nature and the place of the crop circle itself.
We had heard of crop circles. A neighbouring farm had had 2 simple circles, but we hadn't had any. We'd maybe read a little bit about them in the papers, but we certainly didn't know very much about them. And on the 12th of July, we were driving to Marlborough quite early in the morning, and we saw it. And stopped the car and went up on the hill, which overlooks it. By which time, of course, other members of the farm staff had seen it as well. And we were excited and didn't know what to do. And I remember that there were people that were investigating these circles. So we came back to the house and then started to try and report this thing. I rang various bodies. I rang the police, the Citizens Advice Bureau, ADAS, which is an agricultural advisory service, and nobody seemed to know what I was supposed to do about this. And then I rang MAF, the Ministry of Agriculture, and as luck would have it, the lady that answered the phone was herself interested in crop circles and knew Colin Andrews' telephone number. She gave it to me. I telephoned him and he came pretty well straight away, actually. He also then gave me other phone numbers and we notified other experts. He came along and was extremely excited. He then told us that, as far as he knew, it was the most complex, sophisticated crop circle ever found in the world. The people who come seem really genuinely interested in the phenomena, fascinated by it. As for what they get out of it, we get all sorts of reactions. We do get, I think the most common reaction, and certainly the one that I feel as well, is these things seem to bring people together in a very happy way. Quite often there are lots of people in these circles, and there are groups of total strangers stood around having the most animated conversations they've never met in their lives. And it's all very friendly and happy, and it's almost a bit like a carnival sort of atmosphere. Or there's like a camaraderie amongst people, it seems to be anyway. But we have had people who've actually been physically sick, and we've had people who've not been able to go in.
I have been certainly criticised by some of the scientific fraternity and my engineering type colleagues for stating now quite categorically intelligence is involved because the evidence is there for all of them to see. We were looking at, as we said earlier, some years ago, at simple single circles. We already had enough information in the first 3 years to prove they were locating themselves with respect to the fields and the topography in a very intelligent fashion. As the patterns became more complex, their referencing to the topography and indeed to man-made features was intelligent. We've seen them locating themselves to colour, something that has optical appreciation. And on occasions, and I've got to be careful here, that they appear to locate, arrive in their whole being as almost requested. That is deep and profound, but if we really are looking at something that is responding and reacting to the psyche of man, then we're looking at a form of intelligence which we simply do not understand. We, I believe, are looking at an interface, the very point at which this dimension is affected by another dimension. There is a very deep spiritual content here. I fervently believe that we all, nature locks us in to a scale of existence beyond which we cannot reach, and perhaps unfortunately never will quite be able to reach or see. It's the same analogy as the ant, and there are many of them all around us here which will not have a clue of our existence and our being. As large as we are, many thousands of times larger than that single ant, and yet it is locked into its own scale of existence beyond which it is incapable of seeing and understanding. And that's where we are too, locked in and living on a single molecule, one of thousands, if not millions, of molecules. We have no perception of what's going on beyond. We cannot see the giant's foot. We cannot see the cosmic finger which is drawing the pictures in the canvas fields of our planet. And perhaps we never will, but it has purpose. It must have purpose. And that's why we have to go on trying to understand. The quickest route is through sensitivity, learning more about nature. I'm sure of that. This is one of 4 circles sharing a common axis running right through all 4 of them. This is a 5-metre anti-clockwise circle, and only the second time we've ever seen this. This particular pattern has appeared only once before at Beulah in Australia, back there a few years ago. Precisely the same as this. And again, you can see the spiralling symmetry is really very pretty indeed. Here we've got a single plant of wheat around which this bindweed has wrapped itself, clearly quite some time ago and before the event, and the whole thing has collapsed, including, of course, the weed itself. And as you can see, the weed is not broken or scuffed or bruised in any way at all. It simply has been involved with the phenomenon, the energy that created this large marking.
I feel I know 2 things. I know they're not made by people. There might be hoax circles, but I think the majority of them are not made by people. And I know there's an energy there as well. So that's 2 things that I know. From then on, really, it's just what you feel. I feel strongly that these are not random, that they are deliberate. Whether they're coming from within the earth, whether they're tied in with ancient monuments, ley lines, and all the mysteries that we still have associated with the earth, or whether they're coming from without, from other intelligences, from a creator, from something out there somewhere. I don't know. I feel if it is a message, if people are trying to get through to us in some way and give us a message, I don't think they're sending us a message of congratulations. I don't feel we're being told, well done, humanity, you're doing a great job. I feel if this is a message, it's a message of doom, and it's a message of, if you don't get your act together, something big is going to happen.
In 1987, the very definitely scientific approach to my own particular research took quite a knock when I returned to a field at Kimpton, a small village in north central Hampshire, and I had forgotten to take a particular measurement earlier in the day. I returned alone and walked up into the ring. This was a ring and not a circle, a very unusual ring with 3 circles nearby in the adjacent field. I took my measurement and I walked totally unplanned into the standing green wheat, was up to sort of waist height, and I placed my hands together, as I say, totally unplanned and very unusual for me. I guess I hadn't put my hands together and prayed since I left school, really. But I spontaneously, I put my hands together, and I said, in my mind, I prayed, I said, God, if you could only give me a clue as to what this is all about. This was 5 years. It was after 5 years then of sheer frustration in really not getting anywhere fast with the research. And absolutely, spontaneously, as if in response to that thought, was a very unusual noise. The noise was at very low level initially. It was electrostatic, crackling, buzzing sort of noise, very much like the European cricket, but many of them, buzzing all at the same time. And this was about 8 feet away from my standing position. It was very directional. I could look precisely from where it was coming from. There was nothing to be seen. But the levels of energy, the sound, increased tremendously to such a level that I came very close to panic. I really did. I looked around the field for my quickest route out and was really at that point, as you do when you are that frightened, very, very close to panicking and losing general control over myself, when the noise, which by this time, some 15 seconds perhaps later, at tremendous levels, I have not heard noises like that, only from a laboratory with very high levels of voltage before you get a discharge. It reached a tremendous pitch when suddenly it just stopped. It stopped as quickly as it had begun. But the effect that that had on me was extraordinarily profound. It changed my whole concept because I couldn't, once again, here we had something else, this time a noise, not the visual that I couldn't account for some years earlier. Now we had a sound, and which did appear to respond to my thoughts, and it too I couldn't begin to account for in terms of science and physics. That noise, I believe it was the first time it had been heard. I certainly shared it with my colleagues and lived with it for 2 years until other people also experienced it.
Yep. That's a terrible noise, just as you stand in the centre.
Are you getting a noise there, Richard?
Very, very bad indeed.
Yeah, I can hear it here. I can feel it here.
This is our old friend back.
It is. Yeah. There, that's it.
I was coordinating the first and then the largest surveillance operation ever conducted into fringe phenomena of any kind anywhere in the world. It was called Operation White Crow 2 years ago, close to Winchester, looking into that natural amphitheatre called Chesfoot Head, a location where crop circles have appeared certainly for sure almost pretty well every year for 12 years. Having said that, we haven't actually seen one of these this year, although we have now 91 formations in Wiltshire and this county of varying types. The surveillance didn't stop. It was running day and night, 24 hours a day. What happened there was also of great importance. At about 20 past midnight, on the very last night, running into the final hours of Operation White Crow, this very same noise, this buzzing, cricket-like noise, started, we could hear it initially at, again, a very low level, and it came in from the east across 2 fields, and it approached the circle in which we were in. It stopped for a brief moment, and all of us effectively looking at one another. I broke the ice because I recognized that noise. It was the one I'd heard at Kimpton, and I looked at one of my colleagues nearby and said, you know, can everybody else hear what I'm hearing? And they could all indeed. They were all thinking the same thing. Whatever is it? Well, the noise then, it moved from the point at which it becomes stationary and literally encircled the circle twice. It did it relatively quickly, and they were all adults, all grown people. We huddled together because the stereophonic effect was really quite frightening. There was obvious behaviour. That noise was demonstrating a behaviour. It knew what it was doing. It had approached the circle. It stopped. It encircled the circle twice. It then moved back one segment, approximately 1/4 of its rotation in the reverse, in the clockwise direction. It manoeuvred in all sorts of peculiar ways there, and ultimately finished up moving away in the direction from which it had arrived. And a short time later, at first light, that very morning, that same night, a police car containing 2 policemen from Hampshire Police here, they approached our surveillance point and asked us if we were aware of a new crop circle, a beautiful crop circle with a single annular ring around it, much like Saturn. And we didn't know of this new marking. We went back with them and we looked at the most staggering new arrival, at the point from which that noise had come from and where it went back to. The patterns, some would say the signs, are becoming so intricate, so meaningful, something must be in a hurry. The whole phenomenon is on an exponential course. All scientists recognize a curve of that kind when they see it, and we're looking at a phenomenon which is now not only evolving in its patterning, we are looking at densities which are increasing, many more circles appearing in small areas. We have fields as many as 30 in 10 acres of field. We're looking at the physical size of the formations increasing, some as large as 400 feet across. That's exponential. I'm absolutely sure in my own mind, as sure as I can be, that we have entered a phase where we have the last chance to live with Mother Planet. We know that she's gravely ill, and we also know that we, collectively we, are the cause of that illness. Her atmosphere is opening up at the poles and pulling back to the equatorial zones. Her water, her oils, her blood is being taken from her and polluting her lungs. Her lungs, in the form of her leaves on her trees, are dying and withering. Her waters are dropping away. Her rivers are drying up. That is undeniable. We know that exists, and that cannot continue. If that trend continues for very much longer, we won't have a planet. We will not have life. Life will have snuffed out. And what we will see, what others may see in the future, will be a barren climate, a barren planet like we see on our moon and in Mars and other planets nearby, where life may have existed at one time and has now ceased. We're entering that phase, and we can do something about it. We know we can do it collectively. We have a final opportunity to put things right. We have got to learn to harmonize. We have to learn our place in nature. Mother Planet is in serious trouble, and we can do something about it. I am, on the positive side, heartened, very heartened, by the political changes and the interest in the environment generally, and this comes almost as if overnight, like somebody has thrown a switch. And this is where I am sure the crop markings, the signs that have arrived on our planet are playing their part. The full phenomenon is yet to be seen. The full phenomenon, I do believe, will encompass all of the reports that we're receiving now. The grand finale will be a manifestation of a kind that no man will doubt. What's coming out of the noise, the golden star and the ground markings will be a manifestation of a physical kind that will, I hope, will unite all mankind in knowing and accepting that he is indeed then put into his place effectively in the pecking order, in the universal and natural pecking order. And at that point, we really and truly will have reached the new age. The turning of the key will have been accomplished. That's where I believe this is all going. And that's why it is so important to humanity that we study and participate. We share this tremendous time when the signs have arrived. another planet is in serious trouble and we can do something about it. We have a final opportunity to put things right. We have got to learn to harmonize. We have to learn our place in nature. That's where I believe this is all going. And that's why it is so important to humanity that we study and participate. We share this tremendous time when the signs have arrived.
Hoy, después de más de una década, se puede decir que todo el fenómeno de los círculos que han aparecido en el sur de Inglaterra y en otras partes del planeta responden a un lenguaje ideográfico. Un lenguaje que tal vez nunca llegaremos a descifrar o que tal vez nunca entenderemos, pero que tiene el suficiente interés como para tener a especialistas, científicos, investigadores, fanáticos y escépticos pendientes de lo que está sucediendo. En el video hemos visto cómo este fenómeno, que fue conocido en torno a los años 80, apareció repentinamente. Primero, eran simples círculos de 3 metros, que con los años se fueron transformando en grandes figuras con más de 100 metros, cada vez más complejas, difíciles de entender. Son muchos los enigmas que todavía encierran estas figuras. La energía magnética que se detectó en el centro de los círculos, el sonido que fue registrado por la BBC, su significado desconocido. Pueden ser códigos, puede ser un mensaje mandado por etapas. Tal vez sea un mensaje proveniente del exterior, pero si fuera un mensaje extraterrestre, ¿por qué escogieron este sistema de comunicación y no otro sistema? ¿Es que no hablan? ¿Acaso solo pretenden llamar nuestra atención? Y la pregunta clave, ¿quiénes son? ¿Son terrestres? ¿Extraterrestres? La verdad es que nadie los ha visto. Al analizar las figuras de Inglaterra, lo primero que nos llama la atención es que muchas de ellas ya las encontramos en el origen de nuestras expresiones gráficas, imágenes que hemos utilizado para comunicarnos y que denominamos pictogramas e ideogramas. Por ejemplo, los diseños circulares, los círculos con anillos, los círculos concéntricos, o bien los círculos unidos por ejes, son perfectamente conocidos entre las manifestaciones ideográficas de nuestras antiguas culturas, como la cultura megalítica de Inglaterra. Pero tal vez muchas personas se pregunten, ¿qué es un ideograma? Un ideograma es un diseño que forma una idea. Veamos primero un pictograma, un diseño que solo representa la misma figura. En este caso, el dibujo de una serpiente expresaría a la misma serpiente. En cambio, en un ideograma, la serpiente expresaría una idea. Podría ser la idea de la medicina, del mal o del bien, o como en los antiguos egipcios, a los faraones, a sus dioses. En nuestro alfabeto estos diseños se han convertido en puros signos fonéticos, en los sonidos de las letras. Observemos cómo en este caso la letra S o Z, similar a una serpiente, busca representar el sonido de estos reptiles. También las formas circulares están presentes en el origen de muchas escrituras. Veamos, por ejemplo, en los jeroglíficos egipcios, en donde el dios Ra, el dios solar, está representado por un círculo. Tenemos muchos lenguajes ideográficos realizados en nuestro pasado histórico y que no han sido descifrados todavía, o solo parcialmente. Antiguas escrituras que esperan ser aclaradas, transcritas por los especialistas. Pero son necesarias muchas investigaciones para comprender un mensaje escrito o en ideogramas sin tener nociones de la lengua a la que pertenece. Si no se hubiera descubierto la famosa piedra Rosetta en Egipto, en donde había el equivalente en griego de los jeroglíficos egipcios, posiblemente hoy los egiptólogos todavía la estarían buscando. Imaginémonos por un momento que un extraterrestre descubre un mensaje con la palabra SOS, o una fórmula química, o un pentagrama de música. ¿Cómo lo va a descifrar si no tiene el equivalente de las fórmulas o de las notas de música?